Welcome back. Now, following the recent Mavoko demolitions where properties worth millions were reduced to rubble, the question is, why does this script keep repeating itself? About a decade ago, victims of the Syokimau land evictions suffered the same fate. It often begins with misrepresentation of ownership of a land, usually that's public, then forging of documents, followed by subdivision of the land, and then the sale to unsuspecting buyers. Now, the Ministry of Lands has been undertaking a digitization exercise of land documents to avert such cases. But has that helped? Well, tonight we discuss what one must know to avoid such pitfalls and how such cases that lead to forced eviction can be handled in a more humane manner. Joining me in studio now is Frederick Mavoko, who's the chairman of the Mavoko Residents Association, and Ken Rutere, a property lawyer. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Frederick, let me begin with you. I know a lot of questions have been coming around. What due diligence did you actually do when purchasing the land?
All right. On my part, I think I did what the law states, based on my knowledge. One, we did a search. I did a search. And I think I have documents from e-Citizen, even the payments that I did, to show that at least I conducted the due diligence.
Right.
I was issued with such certificate confirming really that the land belongs to the society, Haimimalu, Kenya.
Right.
After that, throughout the years, at least we were able to come together as residents just for obvious reasons. But the case was not one of the reasons as to why we came together. But in 2019, I must say, we got some information that EAPCC, that is his applicant Portland Cement, wanted to sell the land, right? And they were planning to evict people. So immediately and quickly, we learned there was a court case that was ongoing. And we had our lawyer, we got a lawyer who went to the court to at least apply for us to be enjoined so that we can also voice our interests.
Right.
So in 2019 also, we got enjoined as interested parties in the case.
Okay.
But something sinister happened, I think around 2020. We got some people who came with a lot of policemen, contingent of GSE officers, came and fenced off a section of the land, around 100 acres. And then it shocked us because there were some buildings that were built on that place they fenced. And to our surprise, those houses were demolished and all the rubbles, all the debris, they were loaded in trucks and they were carried off. It was like funny how that happened. And then all the vehicles that came that day, big high-end cars, all of them number plates were hidden. They were hidden. And then we were surprised and asked ourselves, yes, if these lands truly does not belong to the society, then why is someone coming with hidden number plates? An house is demolished and everything, all the debris is carried off.
Now, by this time, how long had you occupied the land?
Myself, I purchased in 2017.
Okay.
2017 and beginning of 2018, I began erecting my house. Although I occupied before I could complete, I was almost 1 year old in that place.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Ken, you've heard Frederick's story. I mean, and this is one that can be replicated
Severally.
Exactly. So he talked about, you know, doing the due diligence. He got the certificate of search, which usually you're supposed to get from the Ministry of Lands. That checks out usually in terms of this is the owner of the land. Anything else that they could have done?
Well, Victoria, yes. First thing, of course, any purchase of land starts from the contracting stage.
Yeah.
So you enter into your agreements for sale with the individuals who are selling you the property, and the lawyers normally draft these documents. Now, when they're drafting these documents, there are certain documents that are required to be seen by the lawyer in order for you to complete the transaction. Now, if you have any issues with property and you want to do further due diligence, there are several other mechanisms that are there. Okay. Number one, you can actually ask for copies of green cards or records that the lands office holds to show the history of the property. So let's say, for example, on this property that we sit on, it's one mother title. Yes. So in case we were to subdivide this property for sale, then they'll close this older green card and open a new one for each of the new properties that have been subdivided. So the green card helps you see the historical, what you'd call a historical search on the property. So that's the first thing. Number two, we've seen also, just not isolated to this case, people who've built on road reserves, whatnot, etc. So the relevant authorities that deal with this actually have records of where exactly roads proposed roads are supposed to be passing through. So that's your Kura, your Kenha, your Kera, which is the Rural Roads Authority. So you can actually go a step further, write to them, actually get a confirmation whether this piece of property that you're purchasing is actually on a road reserve or any other aspects. If you're building or you're buying property near airports, whatnot, then you can actually write to the Kenya Civil Aviation to find out whether this property is either on a flight path and you need special clearance, or there are certain height restrictions that you cannot construct. So moving on slowly like that. So if there's a railway line, again, the Kenya Railways Authority actually has records on how far their properties on the railways usually pass through. So that's the first step. Number two, of course, is just to ensure that that you also confirm, if someone is telling you they're subdividing the property, the subdivision of the property follows a certain steps, which are normally guided at the base by the county. So if you're going to actually subdivide the property, then the surveyor comes to the ground, he actually measures the property and prepares his report, which goes to the survey office, for the planning office, for approval. So that process, for example, I think we were having a chat with with Fred here, was because I was asking, at what point have there been no titles that have been processed for these properties, if at all the allegations that the property was bought in 1980. So it cannot take that length of time. So you asked me about telltale signs. Right. Yeah. So if there's an unexplained delay as to how the subdivision was done, or that you procured the property, you've done the subdivision plans, but there's no end in sight in terms of the titling of the property and issuance of the new leases in favor of the parties that have purchased. Again, properties again come in two separate two types of regime. You can have a freehold property or a leasehold property. So if you have a leasehold property, of course, you also have to confirm how long do you have left on the lease. One of the things you'll find is that some of the banks, of course, always have certain requirements, because if your facility, for example, you're taking a facility to buy a property and the lease is, let's say, for example, 25 years and your mortgage should be 30 years, of course, the bank will not agree to finance you. Right. They will ask you to extend the term of the lease for it to cover the period that the bank will have an interest in the property until you pay off the facility. So these are some of the things that your lawyers should actually be advising their clients to take, to not just rely on what you'd call the search from the lands office, because at times, and again, we've seen this time and time again, when something like this is ongoing, there's always some sort of collusion at times. I will not say that this was the case in this instance. Yeah. Yes, I would not want to cast any aspersions. I know the investigations currently ongoing. So we will wait, of course, to see what the outcome of the investigations. I think they called over 60 witnesses. So we'll wait to see what the reports from these individuals from the investigation and the statements that are recorded from all these individuals comes to show. at the end of the day.
Right.
So yeah, sometimes it can be actually as simple as just having a chat with the guys who usually are, that random person who's always on around when you're coming to do a site visit.
Right.
They have a lot of information sometimes. And that, again, so what has happened is that there's a recent Supreme Court case, again, that placed a higher burden on purchasers for property to do further due diligence on properties. Like that is the Mombasa, in Mombasa County government, where they were reclaiming an access to the beach, which was, I think, excised from, which was allotted to a former president and later on sold to various third parties. So you find, if you had checked the planning, for example, the planning of the area, it was clear that that property was for a public utility property. So there are various ways that that probably, again, you can actually carry out a further due diligence, not just limited to the searches only. Again, we're not saying that searches are not reliable sources of information for knowing the ownership of the property at that time and any encumbrances. Right. So for example, if you do a search and you find a charge, for example, to a bank, then you find that also that should be an alarming issue. And when you're contracting, then a discharge should actually be involved as part of your completion documents. I
mean, all that you're talking about definitely needs to be done by a property expert, a lawyer who knows how to kind of get through these loopholes. But it's literally a gamble, especially if there is collusion internally, right? Yes. Because you really don't know whether papers have been forged, someone is trying to at least cover the other in different land offices. But, let me come to you, Frederick, in terms of what has happened since the demolitions for you. I know DCI had set up help desks to try and get information from those who were affected. Has there been any other activity?
So, first of all, Vicky, to mention, the matter that was before the court was number 74 of 2014, and with a petition of petition 10, number 10 of 2018. Now, this matter is Jaime, the society that had sued Portland, seeking for the court to at least restrain EAPCC from trespassing to the said land, and also transacting the said land. All these court orders were given, all right? Court orders were in place. And even with that, we still had that EAPCC went ahead and sold the land. Now, this year, sometimes this year, I think beginning of this year, the Jaime Malu Kenya Society now went and sought to amend the pleas, and they were granted. Then, I don't know what happened. By the time it was on 9th of October this year, by that time they were going for a mention. They had served the parties, but not within the time that the court had given, 21 days. Yeah. So what happened is the whole matter was thrown out, right? The whole matter now that the society had filed was thrown out. Immediately, the following day was an holiday. It was on a Tuesday, holiday. Then came on Wednesday. So I understand the society went and filed another matter. And then by Friday, the matter had not been certified urgent. And then something happened that Thursday. We began to, like sources told us that there were some GSE officers that were converging somewhere, and some heavy machinery was being witnessed coming to near that area. Then we did not understand what was happening. Then on Friday morning, we hear there are more police officers that are being brought just near the property. Yeah. Then we were also informed that the president will be coming to EPZ, just a property that is near, just adjacent to where we lived. So By 2, the president issued a statement revoking all the title deeds in just empty lands. Victoria, it didn't even take like 20 minutes. First house was down. Then we wondered what was happening, because all of us were in shock. It was a working day. So many people were out working. I tell you, so many people never even got to save even a thing, even a spoon.
I mean, and devastating, because we saw it. We covered it over the days that it was happening. What is the way forward? I mean, what are residents doing now?
I can tell you, like, it was so traumatizing. And people never even had places to go, to relocate to. I witnessed families sleeping in the cold. And you know, being the resident chairman, everyone is calling you, asking you, what are we doing? Where do we go to? What are you doing? And yourself, you are also caught up in the same mess. So I'm telling you, people really went through a lot. And I'm telling you, even as we speak, there are people who have not settled. There are people that have been hosted in just nearby, who owns an hotel just nearby. He's even hosted some residents in there. Some families are hosted in there. And even school-going children, I'm telling you, it's a mess. It's a mess. I'm telling you, there are people who have not even settled. Not even settled. So the way forward for everyone, I don't know. Some of them even relocated to even their villages back home. And I tell you, these families have school-going children, and they are forced to relocate to their rural homes. What happens to the children who are going to school, who will be sitting for exams? It's a mess. It's a total mess. I'm telling you, even when I was coming here, some people were even calling me, and they are borrowing you money, thinking that you are even better than them. You are not. You are not.
You know, Ken, I mean, this is the reality of such situations. You know, people took bank loans to build these houses, and you have nothing to account for anymore. In such situations, is there any legal recourse? I mean, what can one do?
Okay, so unfortunately, about the legal recourse. If property was acquired illegally, then you have little recourse in terms of if you are, of course, the first purchaser in this instance. Now, for the subsequent purchasers, for example, I entered into an agreement with Fred for him to sell me the property. The certain assumptions are supposed to be there is that they actually own the property and had the right to actually sell the property to me. So in case I actually have built on the property and now that the house is down and of course he did not own the property, I can try and sue Fred, the person who sold me the property. Again, as you're saying, of course, there are also other measures that could have been taken to assure that, because if the property was not particularly in use by the company, they could have actually approached them and actually just regularized the sales. That could have been done as well. But again, properly, if the property was supposed to go under certain use, then it would be difficult, if not impossible. Now, when you carry out our land registration system is based on something called a torrent system. Now, the torrent system is that whatever is on the register, I can take it as gospel truth. And in case of a loss, then you can also try and sue the registrar who actually issued, or the lands office that actually gave you a search and gave you the comfort of that particular issue. But again, it goes into, there are certain issues that also, of course, for every rule, there's also an exemption. So if there was an illegality at the back of it, then again, you get to a certain point whereby you may be left with few remedies apart from probably going after the person who sold you the property. Because if some of these buildings were also constructed, I'm assuming they had building permits. How did the county government issue building permits on property that did not belong to these individuals? Because part of the documents you submit when you're applying for building permits and whatnot is actually evidence of ownership of the property. So you could try and go after all these entities because they gave you a certain comfort of sorts, and especially the person who sold you the property. But that again also goes to the drafting of the contracts. Now, some contracts are done very in a very shallow manner, which means that you get some difficulty in getting redress from, because you're going to be basing your suit, or rather on the contract that you entered into for this person to sell you the property. Okay. So that becomes also an aspect that has to be looked into, and see what exactly the contract say. Did it include the law society conditions for sale that have certain terms that actually protect the purchasers of the property? What
if the purchaser is a SACCO, for instance, society who now kind of purchases collectively?
Yes.
Something like a shareholder certificate, allotment letters, I mean, do those hold weight at all?
Yes. Okay. So you'll find at times, of course, you might have a society that comes and purchases a huge chunk of land, and now once it purchases, it subdivides the property, right? Now, once it subdivides the property, you need to get what you call lots. So, for example, you're 101, I'm 102, he's 103, she's 104, like that. So once that's done, that's the first step. The next step, of course, is now to process the title deeds for these individuals. Because once you do the survey work and you're able to get the survey plans approved and everything, then the next step is actually processing of the title deeds. So that should have been the process that was followed during that particular moment when the SACCO actually acquired the property, as they allege in 1980, if at all that was the point when they wanted to actually allot those properties to the members of the society. So also follow through by societies might be one of the causes for this particular issue, because probably it could have been caught much earlier if there was a follow through by the entity that actually purchased, or alleges to have purchased the property.
All right, clearly a lot needs to still be discussed. It's almost like we need to go through a land buying 101 class as citizens, just to avoid this from continuing on in the future. But thank you so much, Frederick, for your time, and Ken as well. And hopefully this is remedied for you and the rest of the members within your resident association. But we'll be watching that story closely. Let's take a short break here on Citizen Weekend. Much more ahead. Stay with us.